Jacob, it is a wacky world. Let's catch up. A male wins Miss Netherlands, goes on to participate in Miss Universe. First biological male crowned as Miss Netherlands. Dylan Mulvaney wants to leave the States because they're boycotting his products. There's cocaine in the White House. They can't find who it is. Lots of crazy stuff. And you can comment on any of those if you want to go on to those. But I did want to go into the wars and rumors of wars, which, of course, our leaders are extremely willing to go in that direction. Major conflicts throughout the world. I mean, we usually talk about one or two, but there are several of them. And in fact, we didn't even talk about Africa and how in flux it is in different countries. But even the UK defense minister has some criticism about how much money they're giving out to Zelensky and how much Zelensky wants from NATO. So I'll leave those topics in your lap if you want to comment on any of the wacky ones, or you want to go straight into the war and rumors of war.
Concerning Mr. Zelensky, he is only in contrast to Vladimir Putin, a lesser of two evils, that's all. Many countries, probably most countries in the European Union, did not want the Ukraine in the EU, and a major reason was the institutionalized corruption of their government and financial system, of which, of course, the Biden family are players, and always have been since before the invasion of Ukraine by Putin. Secondly, NATO and the countries comprising NATO, the members, did not want the Ukraine in NATO. They didn't want it in NATO. Putin, on one hand, has bitten off more than he can chew. Now he has a problem with Finland and Sweden in NATO, so he's caused NATO to expand by invading the Ukraine. If he just kept out of the Ukraine, there was very little impetus or support for the Ukraine joining NATO. Nobody wanted it. Now Zelensky has a card to play, a reason to appeal. This is a hopeless war. The Ukraine is essentially being decimated. Economically, the people are suffering unspeakably. They're really not winning. It's more of a stalemate than any kind of a victory. They really can't win. Not only that, to a very large degree, it is a proxy war between NATO and Putin. He is something of a stooge. On the other hand, Putin can't win. Now, anybody in their right mind would realize the best thing to do would be to negotiate. Negotiation can take place from a position of strength right now by the Ukraine because of the attempted rebellion or coup d'etat almost that took place in Russia. Russia, if the ruble has gone to a unbelievably low value very quickly in the last 18 months. Putin is stuck with Indian rupees and Chinese yuan that nobody else wants to use, but they insist on buying the oil from him and natural gas at a discount price, paid not in rubles or in dollars or in euros, but in their own currencies. It's not gone well for him economically. Perhaps 500,000 young people have left Russia. He's had an attempted coup d'etat by the Wagner Group. He's not winning. On the other hand, either is Zelensky. It is a lose-lose situation. A lose-lose situation. I said from the beginning, the best thing that could happen is to, and of course the term is obsolete now, but what it used to mean, Finlandize the Ukraine. Give Putin a guarantee that the Ukraine would not join NATO, that it would be a buffer state, and it would not be in NATO, probably not in the EU. we are offering you that. That would be a good proposition as a bargaining point. However, whether he will be willing to give up Crimea and those eastern Donetsk regions and so forth, bordering on Russia, is another question. It's going to be hard negotiation.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
But how long can he go on? His position is more vulnerable. The West has overstated how bad Russia has been hurt. But you have McGregor and these other guys who have understated it. It has been hurt. And the West and the Western media has overstated the victories of Ukraine. No, they've not only overstated the victories, they've understated the damage being done to Ukraine. Again, it is a lose-lose situation. The real danger is it can drag in other countries.
Yeah.
Remember, that's how World War I happened. Big countries got dragged into a local conflict.
Yeah, exactly. Jacob, what do you think about the fact that Russia said, look, we've had some peace deals, we have some treaties that we wanted to make, but NATO keeps getting in the way of it, including Boris Johnson, including Biden says, no, under no circumstances we're gonna have this peace deal. I don't think the West wants peace. I think they want to destroy Russia. Ukraine, it just happens to be their middleman, which is of course destroying Ukraine and destroying. Okay. I think this war got to the last Ukraine.
After his initial aggression in Georgia and Belarus, and something that was big on this side of the Atlantic, reported in America, but did not have the impact in America it's had in Britain and Europe, the murder of Litvenko with the green tea, when they put the polonium in the green tea, and Putin did a old KGB style political assassination in Russia. And another one, he did another one also in Salisbury, of a Russian dissident. This has pushed NATO further east than it probably would have went had it not been for his own aggression. Every time he gets aggressive, he bites off more than he can chew. On the other hand, you are right. They are trying to get rid of Putin. They'd like to get rid of Putin, but they're not telling you the reasons they like wanting to get rid of Putin.
Yeah.
We will tell you the reasons on catching up, why they want to get rid of Putin. The real issue that has America so angry at Putin is not the Ukraine. That's an issue, but it's not the issue. It is BRIC. It is his desire, or the desire he had, to make the ruble a reserve currency, as the euro dollar is, and as the petrodollar is. Yeah. He wanted to do the same thing. His antics in the Middle East, particularly in Syria, were designed to create instability in the Middle East, including his backings of Iran, in order to drive up the price and value of Russian oil and natural gas. It's not about the Ukraine primarily. That is the excuse. That is the pretense. It is about what currency is going to be the world currency reserve. What is going to be the petro currency? Is BRIC going to emerge as some kind of a challenge to the American dollar? That is the question. Thus far, the euro has failed to. BRIC wanted to. You're talking here about global currency reserves. That is more important to the thinking of the powers that be in Washington and New York and in London than the Ukraine itself.
No, I no doubt ultimately it's really about oil, currency, stability, economically. I did want to ask you before I forget this. At the NATO summit in Lithuania, the British UK defense minister was pretty adamant about the fact that they're not an Amazon delivery for Zelensky. And then there's internal conflicts within NATO. whether they should keep funding this to Ukraine because they're not getting their money's worth. Any thoughts on that, Jacob? It seems like Zelensky seemed like a lost puppy trying to find somebody to talk to in the midst of all these at the NATO summit. It seems to be that there's a pretty hard division between the ones that want to keep funding this war and the one that says, let's cut our losses and move on.
Everybody knows that between him and Putin, it's simply a matter of he's the lesser of two evils in terms of the figures. Now, that's not to say that Britain and other countries are not sympathetic to the people of the Ukraine. They are. But the Ukrainian government is something else. It is a corrupt government, of which the Biden family were partners.
Yes.
That is part of the reason you see a diversity of opinion between the Biden administration and some of the NATO allies on this side of the Atlantic. Yep. Why? Well, why? Well, the cluster bombs being the latest.
Yep.
The United States was not signatory to the cluster bomb ban treaty. Either was Russia. But the United States did observe it, even though it was not signatory to it. The United States policy was, we will observe it with other countries that observe it. But Putin has stopped observing it. This is typical of what has happened in military history of Europe. When Goebbels and Hitler went to what they called total war, when they knew they were losing at the end of 1944, and they began violating the Geneva Conventions, killing prisoners of war, bombing hospitals, things like that. Well, the Americans did the same thing. Take no prisoners. Well, Putin's going to use cluster bombs. Well, now we're going to let Ukraine use. Where does this end?
Yeah. Well,
where does this end?
Jacob, a question on that. Since we're doing that, can we say what it's the obvious? The U.S. is fighting Russia.